my friend Nastasia on Twitter has a question. Actually, she has a couple questions for us.
Yes, she does. Here's what she says. How might we set kind boundaries with family members who seem to thrive on drama and chaos? What about boundaries with family members we've emotionally and mentally outgrown, especially regarding topics around sexuality, non-traditional lifestyle choices, and religion?
So, Nedra, we obviously get dragged by the relationships we cling to. Oh, I wish you would change. I wish you would see my point of view. Or even worse, I'm going to make you understand me. And that rarely ever works out. What's who was it? Upton Sinclair who said a man convinced against his will is of the same opinion still, right? And so, yes, I can convince you of something. Oh, but I'm different. I'm going to convince you of it. Yeah, but as soon as you turn around, as soon as I turn around, you cease being convinced. So for Nastasia, you have a chapter in your book about boundary violations, about codependency and enmeshment. Can we talk to Nastasia about, creating those, and she was clear here, kind boundaries. Maybe sometimes we go out of our way to be overly kind, and maybe that doesn't set the boundary in a way that is effective.
I think when people have a different perspective from us, we do try to convince them to think like us. And perhaps it's kind to accept that we think differently about something and to not argue about it. I know that sounds like, that sounds like it's so easy. But it's really agreeing to, we think different. And you don't even have to tell the other person. They can say their one thing and you can just switch the topic because you already know that you don't agree on this topic and there's no changing your perspective or changing their perspective. There are many things that people talk about that we may not necessarily agree with, and we don't have to bring them to our side. But that's what we think of as like, okay, this was a great conversation because now they think like me. And sometimes it's accepting people won't think like us. And the kindest thing to do is allow them to have their thoughts. And I have my thoughts. They don't have to agree with my lifestyle and, my political views or whatever those things are. And it's okay. I still love this person. I still want to be in relationship with them. And these are the 5 topics that we just can't talk about.
I found that with our own podcast here. So me, TK, and Ryan, we all voted differently in the last presidential election. And it's not that I think they're wrong or bad. And, oh man, they'd be better friends if I could just get them to vote like me, see my point of view, right? No, and I think TK is he's a Mozart with respect to diplomacy. He can have the most radical viewpoint, but it comes off as so normal.
This is like a really nice way of saying you think I'm a fringe conspiracy theorist.
No, what I really respect about you is that you're able to talk about these third rail topics in a way that doesn't feel contentious at all. I don't ever feel attacked by you. And even when we radically disagree about something, I still feel supported by you. And how wonderful is that we can disagree completely and yet we can still have a nice hug afterward and I don't feel insulted at all.
Yeah. I think somewhere along the way, we bought into this idea that to listen to a person without explicitly stating, I think you're wrong, that's tantamount to endorsing them. And you even see this a lot in podcast culture. It's very difficult to just let another person speak if they're saying something you don't agree with, because we've got to signal to the rest of the world, I don't endorse everything they're saying. That really should just be the given.
Yeah.
Right? That 2 human beings sitting down having a conversation is not the same thing as a concession ahead of time of everything that might be possibly said. And so there's room to just let another person say what they say. Say, okay. That's not the same as saying, I agree. I submit to your teachings. Okay, I got you. My brother Gerald, who is far better at this stuff than I could ever hope to be, he's had a lot of people say to him things like, you ought to do this, you ought to do that. And, he just kills them every time with like, just pray for me. Pray for me. And like, you should see, like, I mean, because people just come at him with so much heat, and he says, just pray for me. And it's like, there's nowhere to go for that. It's like, oh, okay. What am I going to do with that? Okay, I guess I'll pray for you, right? And he may totally disagree with that person, but he doesn't need to spell out for them, I think you're misguided, in order to retain the freedom that he has to go make his own choices. And sometimes that need to argue, that need to defend ourselves, that need to justify, it's an expression of the fact that we haven't made peace with what we really feel, what we really think. And so we feel like we need the permission of other people's endorsement in order to have the power to live the lives that we want to live. But we don't.
We need validation. We're looking for validation for our perspective, our way of being. We're looking for that confirmation. Like, no, what you're doing, it's okay. I agree with everything. And you're right. There are times where, if you're confident in your life choices, you're confident in the way that you think about things, they can have their perspective and you can listen and you can say, okay, yeah, pray for me. Or, I like to say,
Did you enjoy this standalone Patreon highlight? If so, you can listen to full episodes of the Minimalists private podcast available exclusively on Patreon. Visit patreon.com/theminimalists or click the link in the description. Your support keeps our podcast and YouTube channel 100% advertisement free.